The way I'd like to answer that question is twofold. Yes, there are products which are nutritionally not as high in certain constituents and obviously are cheaper. The problem is that just because it's expensive doesn't necessarily make it ideal for particular animals. We do see certain food allergies, and certain foods contain if you like, E factors, and dogs suffer from sometimes the same problems that they can get skin problems from food which perhaps is too high in calorie or protein, etc. The other thing which I would like to draw people's attention to is that certain foods are easily given, easily digested, but do not do the animal's dentition any good. Now, really what I'm trying to say is that statistics show that between 5 years and 8 years, something up to 50% of dogs and cats require general anaesthetic and some dental work. And this is usually because tartar has built up because the animal hasn't been fed food that it grinds on, that it eats and chews, and therefore the natural system of preventing plaque form. The other thing which one has to emphasise and go on and on and on to the risk of being boring is with rabbits that people will feed too much concentrated food so that the animal gets its nutritional requirements too quickly. It doesn't spend time, as rabbits should, eating hay and grinding the teeth down, because of course in rabbits the teeth go on growing all the time and therefore should be worn down. One of the main problems of illness in rabbits is because they don't eat enough hay and get too much concentrate food and don't grind their teeth down.
Does it help you to look at how the animal would have lived in the wild and then how it's living in our homes as to how we should be feeding our animals?
I think this is again very important and raises again 2 points, not just the nutritional factor but the animal's behaviour. For instance, cats are a nocturnal animal, and being confined can cause cats tremendous problems. And the same as behaviour problems in dogs, you are dealing with a wild creature, and yet we're trying to adapt dogs to a domestic lifestyle. Let me just give you one example. That when the postman comes and delivers his mail, that is his job. What does a dog do? Most dogs have some degree of territorial aggression. Now, that doesn't mean that they fly at the door and want to kill or anything, but they will bark. Now, when the postman comes and delivers letters, the dog will bark. The letters are delivered, the postman goes away. The dog doesn't see it as the letters coming. He sees it as some stranger coming onto his territory. He shows some degree of territorial aggression, and the person goes away. The dog has won. You've reinforced his territorial aggression.
So therefore, if the postman were to stay and have a cup of tea, then the dog would get more aggressive.
Not necessarily, because, of course, that most domestic dogs are not overly aggressive, and they will let people into their house providing you say it's okay. Of course, what the trick is for the postman to come in, as you say, have a cup of tea, but to have a few treats for the dog, and the dog realises, I may show a bit of territorial aggression, but this stranger gives me treats. This is good, and therefore my territorial aggression is not aggravated.
But then we come back to our overweight dogs again if he gets too many treats.
In your answer to your question about giving too much treat, yes, much of dog training is reward orientated by giving food. all you need to do is take the equivalent amount of calorific value off its main food.
How does the dog chasing the postman and showing territorial aggression relate to how it finds food if it were a wild dog?
That a wild dog is using up energy to feed its energy requirements, whereas in domesticity the amount of exercise they get is a fraction of what they would. So it's almost like saying, well, they're not using up much energy obtaining their food, if any, because we are literally giving it to them on a plate.
How do we then relate to the age of the animal and how much we should be feeding them? Should we, there are senior foods on offer in the supermarkets. Should we go that, or are they just a gimmick?
No, they're not a gimmick at all. They're a very pertinent point, because remember that in domesticity, animals live longer than in the wild. In the wild, it is the wild. And if an animal can't hunt and feed, it dies. Whereas, of course, we extend our animals' lives by treatments that prevent further complications. For instance, if an animal has an abscess through fighting and we treat it with antibiotics, we stop the infection spreading and damaging the heart, the lungs, the other tissues, etc. So they live longer, but of course they become less active, and therefore they don't require the same nutritional balance as they would when they were younger. So what they are doing when they feed senior diets is reducing those calories and sometimes things which would affect the heart, such as salt levels, and to make it more pertinent to their age.